Hi there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. This is episode 3 of a 3-part series on using twine in our card making. So we are starting off this video with a 5x5 inch card base, and then I have a 5x5 inch piece of cardstock, and I am going to start off with some heart dies. Now just use whatever you have in your stash, and I have cut one out of a taco box, just a spare piece of cardboard. And that's how I got my template. And I have a nice sharp pokey tool and a nice thick piece of foam. You could use a mouse pad or anything else you have lying around as well. And I am going to poke the holes around this heart. And this is what I'm going to be sewing through. So I put a little bit of removable adhesive on the back of the heart, and that keeps it in place while I'm doing all of these holes. And I used a ruler for some of the holes to kind of keep them equal going all the way around the heart, but other times I pretty much just eyeballed it. I mean, it depends what kind of person you are. If you like to be nice and precise, go ahead and measure, and if you just like to eyeball it, then do what works for you. So I did a little bit of both, just because I feel like it looks nicer if it's more even with the finished product, but yeah, to each his own. So I kind of use the ruler here to make sure that some of them are all lined up, but as I said, doesn't really matter either way, and yeah, just do what you can make work. This is also a piece of 80-pound Neemasola white that I am poking the holes through, and I think a lighter piece of cardstock works a little bit better, but don't go too light on it, otherwise it's kind of not sturdy enough. But anyway, here I am measuring up just to find the center of the heart, and I will need to poke quite a big hole in the center here because I'm going to be going through this hole over and over again. So I am actually sharing 2 cards with you guys today, and this is the first one obviously, but I really like how both of them turned out, so I decided to keep both of them in this video, so sorry for it being a tiny bit longer than usual. This is the twine that I'm using. This is like baker's twine that is from Aliexpress. I'll link it down below. And I'm just using a needle that has kind of a big hole in the end, like big enough for the twine to fit through. So I'm just going to tape down the very end of the twine, and then I'm going to start off here by going through that middle hole, and then I just go through the center of the heart, and then I go through the next one around, and then back through the center of the heart, and then the next one around, and then back through the center every single time. Now, I am fast forwarding through this, and in a minute I will skip entirely to when I'm finished, because you should not take note of how I am doing this sewing. It is not my forte, and my family would probably have a laugh if they knew that I was creating a video on this. But anyway, I am just doing my best, and that's what card making is about for me, doing my best. But anyway, so I am going around the heart, and I just need to poke the tool through again in the middle because I needed the hole to be a little bit bigger. But I think when I was going around this heart, I felt like the edges of the heart kind of weren't defined enough, maybe, or yeah, I'm not quite sure. It just didn't feel right. So you'll see what I do in a little bit to fix that. Also, it doesn't matter if you run out of twine halfway through, because no one is going to see the back of this, so you can just put a little piece of tape behind it and tape it off, and add your new piece and start again. So there is the finished heart, and as I said, it didn't feel quite defined enough around the edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this die here and just trace around it with a pencil, and then I'm just going to freehand cut on the line, give or take, and then in a second I'm going to create kind of a background piece to make it stand out around the outside a little bit better. So as I said, this isn't super perfect, and if you're a perfectionist, then maybe not this one, but it looked pretty good to me. It looked good enough to me anyhow. So then I have die cut out another heart which is one size bigger, and I have this is the worn lipstick color Distress Oxide, but when I put this down here it just didn't match the red twine, so I used a little bit of Candied Apple Distress Oxide to go over the pink, and I kind of end up going back and forth a little bit between the two of them, and that definitely made a much closer color which I ended up liking. So then I have a piece of, I think this is 4 3/4 by 4 3/4 inches, and I'm just doing my little trick where I'm using a little piece of low-tech tape and masking off the very edge, like it's a couple of millimeters at the edge, just to create a really nice border without actually having to add a whole nother matting layer of paper. And then once I've got this last one done, I'm going to move on to making a sentiment for this one. It's just going to be a happy birthday card. So I'm using my favorite banner dies, and then this is a super, super old set. This is from Ali as well, but yeah, it's super old. And I'm going to use that happy birthday, that kind of block happy birthday down there. And I did decide to use my Misty stamping tool. You don't necessarily have to, but I did stamp it a couple of times just to get a nice dark and solid image. So you can see I'm just placing it down, picking it up with my Misty door, and then I'm just using my VersaFine Onyx black ink, and I think I end up stamping it twice, and that just kind of gives it that nice bold look that I'm after. So I give you a wee close-up to see what it looks like. And I actually ended up stamping 2 of those. I just did exactly the same for the other card as well. This is Alina's foam tape, and the best thing about this is that if you take off the release paper on both sides, you are able to make this go around any corner that you want super easily. And so I'm adding some foam tape to pop it up and put it onto that next layer that we created. And then this is just a matter of putting the whole card together. I am going to add a little bit of fun foam to the back of that matting layer though, just to make it stand up. As I said before, I use all sorts of various pieces of foam. I just cut whatever I need to cut, and yeah, no one's going to see the back, so it doesn't have to be perfect, this part. But I'm using a little bit of liquid glue. The liquid glue in this bottle is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish. And I get my glue bottles from Ali. As I said, I will link that down below. And I'm just adding some liquid glue to put all of this together. And this very, very simple card is complete. So that is card number 1 for today. And now that we're going to move on to card number 2, which is similar but a little bit different. So for the first card, I used the heart dies, and now for the second card here, I'm going to use a couple of star dies. These ones have a stitched border around them on the inside, but that doesn't matter. This is the star set that I got them from, so I'm using a couple of different sizes, and again, I cut them out of my taco box just to reuse what I had around me, and I added some removable adhesive on, and I'm going to do almost the same thing as I did with the star. This time it's kind of easier because with the star there's natural points where I can poke holes, and then I literally just poke a hole in between those all around. So it's really easy to get this one nice and even. Then I am going to take my little star and line it up nicely in the middle and do the same thing. Not quite as many holes, I'm only doing the kind of outer points and then the inner corners of the star. But that will be plenty for what we are doing. And this time I'm going to use some yellow twine, and I know there's probably a name for this stitch, and as I said, cross stitch, embroidery, or any type of sewing is not my forte, but it's kind of like a back stitch. I'm kind of going through the back and then down through the next one, and then I kind of skip a hole and we'll go through the next one and come back to the previous one. And then I go kind of 2 forward and then back to the previous one, 2 forward and then back to the previous one. As I said, I'm sure that you'll figure it out for yourself if you choose to give this a go. You just do whatever looks good. But whatever you do, make sure you do it the whole way around so that it looks like it was your plan right from the start. So I am just going all around the star, and I'm going to speed this up in a second just to get through it, because you guys get the gist of what I'm doing. So I'm just going around the outside of the big star at the moment. So I'm ignoring the little one in the middle. I'll come back to that after this. So just around the outside of the big star. And I'm just doing the same thing when I start or finish at the back of my piece. I just use a tiny little piece of double-sided tape to hold the twine down in place. It doesn't matter what the back of your card looks like at all, because as I said, no one is going to see it. So it doesn't matter what kind of mess it's in. But anyway, now I'm moving on to the little star in the middle, and I'm doing exactly the same stitch as I did around the outside, but obviously this one is going to go much quicker because there is much less to do. So there we go, I'm all finished, the inner star and the outer star, and I really like how this little one turned out. And now just to make it into a card. So I am going to use this square die. Now this was part of a set. I don't know if I can find this, but I'll see if I can find the link down below. And it is just kind of a frame die, which a nice kind of thin frame die. Any frame die would be good here. But what I decided to do is use some mustard seed distress oxide and lightly go over it. You can see here down the right hand side that I am just getting rid of most of the ink on my finger dauber because I don't want it to be a really deep solid color. I want it to be kind of lighter around the outside. And then just for fun, I felt like to add a little bit of something to this frame. I have this is the only wood block stamp that I own, the only one that I have, and it's called the Faded Text Background. And I got it years and years and years ago at a Hobby Lobby, maybe, when I was visiting the US. But any stamp would work here, anything to give the outside frame a little bit of texture. It doesn't even have to be fine writing, it could be anything. So just do whatever you have in your stash. And I do like the effect that this gave. I think it's worth it, even though it's kind of hard to pick up on screen, but once you focus in on it, you can really see the difference that it does make. And I like it. So I used the mustard seed as the yellow, and then I used wild honey for the little writing stamp. Then I'm just tracing around the outside of my frame because my piece of paper is too big for what I need. So I'm just trimming it down with my scissors, and then I am going to add some of Alina's foam tape to the outside of this frame. I actually just got my new design team package from Alina, and thankfully I have more foam in there because I have been going through this stuff and I have been buying it non-stop. So I really, really love this foam tape. It is definitely worthwhile giving it a go if you are searching for a good foam tape. So nearly finished. All I'm going to do is glue down this panel onto my 5 by 5 inch card base, and the card base is made of 110 pound Nina Solar White, and again I'm just using the liquid glue. And I said earlier that I stamped 2 of that sentiment, so I'm just going to use the second one of those that I stamped earlier with a little bit of foam tape on the back of Alina's foam tape, and take off the release paper and pop it down the bottom. There is one more thing I decided to do as well before I quickly put it down, is add a little bit of yellow just around the very edges of that sentiment, and that kind of ties it in nicely together. And then because I can't leave well alone, I am going to use some Nuvo drops just to add in some quick little drops, which I think finishes off the card nicely. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Please leave me a comment and give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, bye!